We'll do it live. We'll do it live. And then omit the word we cannot say. Yeah, go ahead.
So power apparently is a necessity for streaming. I mean, I know I was a little shocked to discover this today, but yes, apparently you need electricity to. No, of course I know you need electricity. It's just today has been one hell of a day. We blew a fuse, and then I've spent the last few hours trying to fix it and get everything like adjusted or like fixed. And I've got to say that the first place we went to didn't have anything. The second hardware store we went to didn't have anything. So we called another store and said, "Hey, do you have this breaker? We really need this breaker." And the guy responded, "Yeah, sure, we do certainly have that breaker. It's not the same brand, but it'll work." And I was like, "Great, awesome." We drove all the way there, 20 minutes. Guess what?
Didn't have it.
Didn't have it. Fuck. He's like, "Oh yeah, no, oh no, I guess we sold out a couple days ago." Like, so that's the morning it's been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it's been fun.
You know, technically, Syb, you don't need electricity. I mean, everybody knows that Canadian internet runs on oil, right? So, no, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's just nothing ever seems to work nowadays, does it, ladies and gentlemen? But we might be a few minutes late, but we are here. It is happening. Maximum News, welcome back. We are doing it live just because we didn't have the time to pre-record it yesterday. This might be who knows if we can pull this off. It might become just a regular thing that we do. We got a few stories that we got to talk to you about. Let's just skip the intros. First of all, big story of the past week is everybody's just taken a liking to Arcane. Sort of just popped up into the lives of many people who weren't aware of it, who aren't League of Legends fans like myself. I heard you mention it in our little Discord conversation a few days ago. So I'm saying like, "Oh my goodness, you have to check out Arcane." And then I was like, okay, maybe I'll check it out a little bit. But then a whole bunch of content creators that I'm a huge fan of, who I never would have thought would talk about Arcane, started talking about it. Like this one guy that I've been following for the last 14 years, he talked about it on his movie show. And he's like, "I always thought that video game adaptations suck, but this is the first masterful one." And not only that, he said it's the greatest animated show he's probably ever seen, which is, considering how many great animated shows there are, classic ones, be they from the West or the East, that's pretty high praise. And then, more prominent game pundits, people like Angry Joe, just came out the other day saying, "Oh my goodness, it's a 10 out of 10. You really got to check this out." It's like, okay, fine, I'll check it out. I haven't got through the whole thing yet. It's 9 episodes long on Netflix. I've gone through the first 5. I want to pass it off to Syb, who is a League of Legends fan, who has watched the whole thing, and get his opinion first, and then I will go into greater detail for myself. Syb.
Yeah, so we did... Moontag and I did talk about this a couple last week on our live stream. We were going to continue the topic and actually play some League of Legends this morning and kind of review where the game is as of today. Like, I stopped playing it in 2018 was the last time I logged on, and I only logged on in 2018 to get 2 skins that my brother told me had come out, and I just wanted to get them just in case they ever were not available again for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I hadn't actually played a match since I believe about 2016, 2015. So I stopped playing League games or Riot games as the majority reason is that I really don't like Tencent. I wasn't supporting Tencent.
Right.
I still I have no intention of giving them any money whatsoever. I had a few credits left over from years and years ago. I logged in and there was like, I think I had 214. So I'm going to try and keep that 214 at that scale. Only I don't know if they give you any of that currency that you can buy. I know they give you all the blue stuff that you buy, but yeah, I wasn't happy with where the company had gone. I was really not happy with just the overall experience of working with them. And yeah, I thought that they had treated their lore people. Funny enough, they had treated their lore people quite badly in the past. So it wasn't something that I was really interested in. I had no interest in getting back into the series. But then Arcane came out, and there's been some stuff happening with Tencent. Right now, they're just rumors, so take it with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
But the rumor is that there is a distinct there's this distinct push within the company to get away from the power and control that Beijing CCP has over them. And it's something that the more successful their other markets does. So, for example, Riot and other games, the more likely they are to move out of that. So, fingers crossed that's the case. I'm still very not happy with them as a company. Obviously, Tencent has like they back a couple of good games, but right now you could look at that and you could say that that's the same way that people looked at some of the early stuff that you were getting in trade negotiations with China to begin with. And it's like, sure, you fired all of your steel mill guys from your own country, and you're now 100 dependent on running your country through the imports of another country. So if they ever decided that, you know what, we're just not going to send you, I don't know, pick your poison, steel, drugs, like whatever, like pharmaceutical drugs, obviously.
Right.
If you want any of this stuff, you have to continue to bow the knee to the people that are sending it to you, because you don't have another option. For a lot of countries in the world, there is no option other than getting your steel from China. There's no other option. And when suddenly, you're like, for people who don't know, it's like you have to, and why I keep bringing steel up, it's like you have to have a certain amount of steel within your system, like going into your system in order to maintain anything. And I mean that. If you were to shut down steel tomorrow from any country, and you just like put a canopy over that country, they get no new steel at all, period, in any way, shape, or form. They get food and everything else that they could possibly need distributed into them. Most likely, in the vast majority of cases, unless there's some kind of super genius who comes up with a replacement for steel overnight, that country will revert back to Renaissance time within about 10, 20 years for the most part. Because steel is one of these things that you have to have it. You have to have it in your roads. You have to have it in your bridges. You have to have it in your buildings. You have to have it in all these places. You have to use it for production of electricity. You just have to have it. You can't not have it, period. That's the way that it works. And it's stupid to allow anybody to have full control over that. You should always, always, always be in control of at least 30% of any given thing that is necessary for your survival as a country or as a species. If you suddenly lose control of that and you don't have that at all, well, congratulations, you're gonna hit the wall real fast. Mm-hmm. So anyways, that is my mini tangent. I'm sorry to go into it.
Hey, it's important though.
Fully, but you have to understand where it is and what this means for video games, because again, it's like, yeah, you might think that it's fine, right? You might think that, oh no, this is okay, we can do this, but that thing is always hanging over your head, and you have to be so cautious, so careful, and so methodical when you're trying to do any of this kind of stuff. So that's my tangent, and that's just to set out that I don't agree with what this company is doing on a normal daily basis, and that it is very concerning that this is, that we are seeing, a huge uptick in this company, whilst also, severe and serious problems exist. So anybody who doesn't like Riot, I completely agree with you.
Yep.
But I have spent zero money on Riot. getting back into this stuff, looking at this stuff, and then and kind of doing a review of this stuff. So I played a couple of rounds of League last night with Moon, and we were just kind of like experimenting, seeing where the game was at, seeing what was kind of new. Gosh, there's so much new to that game.
Oh, yeah.
As far as like features and other things like that. I'm seriously shocked. It is really, really, really amazing to see how much new stuff is there. The gameplay, still toxic.
Yeah.
Still toxic, and still, for the most part, fairly, it's League games. Like there's nothing new there, right? It's like it is what it is, and yeah. So that's the kind of stuff. That's my preference. That's us preferencing this, just so that everybody knows where we stand, where I stand on that. Because again, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I'm not going to support a company that abuses that has a tie-in with a government entity that does what they do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go too much into it, but yeah. So that's that. That's where I stand with that. Now, that is aside, we can look at the art that this company's making. We can look at the third-party companies that are making new video games, and we can review them, I believe, quite honestly, because sure, Tencent's getting a few, they're getting a couple pennies on the dollar for stuff that happens there, and I think it's better to reward good direction.
Yeah, so they're
especially the third party companies.
Yeah, so they're incentivized to do more of that.
Exactly, to do the right thing and to make good games, which is really all that we really, really want. So so that's my stance on that. I know, very long winded normally for what we do, especially on Maximum News. So
P.S. Don't play Valorant.
Don't play Valorant. So that's where I'm at right now, and again, I'm not. I really don't want to be hypocritical in dealing with or talking about this subject, because it's a very sensitive one. However, I have to say that Arcane is probably one of the greatest shows I have ever seen. It is quite possibly, like, as far as like, it's for sure in my top 10 right now. If I were to compare this with season 1 of Game of Thrones, I would pick this all the way, because Arcane is doing things that, again, as video game connoisseurs, we have been asking for forever. So that in and of itself gives it a bigger boost than just being a well-made show.
Sure.
It's still a well-made show. It's still produced largely in the United States. It has a lot of great voice actors that weren't ever really given any like props before this, and a lot of them. This is really changing up the way that video games will be looked at. The video games will be functioning as, and it's like, that's great. This is really great. As far as the industry goes, this is the kind of stuff that we want to see, and I'm hoping that we're going to see more and more of it, and that things will get better and better going forward. But yes, very impressed with the overall story, the overall the artistry and the music are just absolutely tops, and things like that are things that I encourage, because those are the artists. And it doesn't matter if Tencent ruins the show in the next 4 seasons or 2 seasons or whatever. Doesn't matter if they start running up microtransactions to unbelievable, ridiculous levels, because they can't take that art away from the people who created it.
Yes.
And that's where I'm like giving my praise to, because again, this art, the writing, the direction, like, they took a video game story and they absolutely knocked it out of the park. It is such a great show, and it's such a great concept of building it in it. And again, I'm more excited for what this means in the future. I'm so excited for where this is going to stand, what this is going to do to video game story, in the future, how many more shows we're going to get, that kind of stuff. I'm really excited about that kind of thing, and I'm very, very excited to see where we go from here, because again, this is something that I want to see happen. I am waiting. I am praying for the day that we get an actual really good D&D story made for film or TV or whatever. Because again, the concept of like D&D is such great. Like I'm not writing a story that's based in the D&D universe, but I am definitely writing a story that's based in a similar kind of rule set universe.
Yeah.
It's fairly similar in a number of ways. Obviously, it's very different in probably more ways, but you know, the foundation is that high fantasy group experience that I think has been missing in film and television. And for some odd reason, whenever somebody gets their hands on the D&D universe and tries to create a story, apparently their version of creating a good story is doing the most dumbest, tropiest things you can think of with the worst, some of the worst actors you could think of, and then wondering why it's not successful. It's like, oh, gee, I wonder. So really, when it comes down to what Arcane is doing for video game story and video game media that builds into other, you know, multimedia sources, that's, you know, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're hoping for. That's what we're wanting to see more of. And I think that Arcane is doing that in an absolutely spectacular way that will, again, I really want to see the encouragement for more places to do this more frequently, to create more of this kind of stuff. The Hour Man, you are watching. Obviously, we're covering news, but we have some video game footage on the screen. Max, do you want to briefly tell us what this is
all about?
Right?
Sorry, what?
The game?
The game is called Immortals: Phoenix Rising.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was Immortals something else. But no. This is the Zelda / Genshin Impact / thing that Ubisoft did, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So, I was really interested when I saw this game come out. It looked really cool. This is definitely kind of like that Genshin Impact / Zelda feel, and that looks great. I really like the idea of this game. It's like it's a great concept, and I really, really like it. I think it's got so much potential.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it looks fun as hell, right? Because this is the type of game that is really, it's really interesting because it's got so much, like, you know, build and whatnot to it. So
it is fun as hell. I wish I had more time to go back and play it, which is something that I have been saying quite a lot lately. But yeah, I recorded this like several months ago, and I just needed something to put on screen so that we could talk, because that's usually what we do.
So anyways, go on about so yeah, what's your take now that I did my take?
Right.
What's your take on it?
Okay, so just to repeat what I said before, I've only seen 5 episodes. I still have 4 more to go, but I can firmly say that of all the video game adaptations that I've seen, there is a certain amount of care and attention to detail that is put into the show that I've yet to see in any other form of video game adaptation, be it in the form of TV or movies or books or whatever. Apparently, some people say that Castlevania is really good. I haven't seen it, but I'd be willing to bet that a number of people who have seen Castlevania and Arcane are going to be ready to say that Arcane is certainly better. And I can understand why, because within Arcane, there is a certain... everything seems to me to be absolutely state of the art, from the animation, which is this amazingly gorgeous blend of 2D and 3D animation. The performances are all fantastic. The narrative is surprisingly in depth. Not only are there these fantastical elements like the concept of unifying science and magic, but there's also this great political backstory that's going on with the denizens of, what is it called? The city that it takes place in. What is it? Piltover, thank you, yeah. They got all that. And then there's this amazing human psychological drama that's going on amongst the main characters that I just am eating up like nobody's business. It's between the main character. This isn't a spoiler. It's between the main characters of Violet and Powder / Jinx, and it's like you barely get this level of care and respect given to people that go through psychological trauma and just the struggle of dealing with it in regular TV shows. But you got it here, and it's based on a video game. It combines all these different elements together in a way that you rarely ever see, not just with Arcane, but like in any form of media. And I cannot wait to see how this ends, especially because everybody's saying that it's one of those TV shows that consistently gets better all the way to the very end. Hopefully I'll be able to finish it in a couple days, but yeah, just my final word on this, just echoing what you said, Syb. I think that moving forward, Arcane certainly has to be considered the gold standard of video game adaptation, and it is something that everybody, whether you're making a movie or a TV show or whatever, has to look up to as, okay, you have to do roughly as good as this in order for your product to be considered good, because it's so far and above everything else that we've gotten so far. Like, I think up until now, the best video game adaptation I've ever seen is Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie. And, that was...
Well, I gotta say the TV show back in the 80s or 90s or whatever it was, that was actually pretty decent too. Like, it ended on a cliffhanger, and, like again, probably doesn't hold up to scrutiny today, but as a kid, I loved that stuff. I remember watching it for the first time. I was a kid in a bowling alley where there was some family stuff, and I was just sitting there absolutely mesmerized by the screen of this show of Sonic the Hedgehog, and I didn't give a rat's butt about the bowling game. I just wanted to watch the show. And yeah, it's great. So there have been good examples in the past, but like you said, going forward, like, one of the things I don't understand, I said this last week with Moon, why on earth there's not a daily, like, not daily, obviously, why there's not a weekly or monthly story, circling around the Mario universe, is absolutely beyond me. It's like, if you just found a really good studio that was really good and said, hey, do you guys want to make a Mario cartoon or anime or whatever? And, here's the guidelines for stories. Like, I mean, again, even if it's done just for really young kids, right? Like Paw Patrol level, like, level intellect. I've unfortunately had to watch a lot of that because of younger nieces and nephews, much more than I prefer. But I got to say that they're competent in creating a show that keeps the kids entertained and that is mildly funny for adults. It's like, at least you're not bored to tears and wanting to do something else, when it's on in the background. Why they can't do that with the Mario universe? And again, there was the Zelda cartoon. That one was atrocious. That's all I remember from that. It was just absolutely atrocious. Mm-hmm. But like Zelda, like so many of our favorite things, why haven't they reached out and created these? And it's, for the longest time, I think they've been convinced that it just can't be done because they put a little bit of money into it, or in some cases they put a lot of money into it in the past with the wrong people, doing the wrong story in the wrong universe, listening to the wrong Hollywood elites tell them how it had to be done correctly. And it's like, and it's no surprise today that the most popular stuff and popular content that's being worked on today, it flies in the face of what the, air quotes, rules are of Hollywood. Hollywood is like, oh yeah, you're going to break every single thing into a 3-act show. And then once you have it in the 3-act show, then you add in some music, you add in some of this, you add in some of that, and you follow a formulaic thing.
Why do you sound like the Canadians from South Park there?
It's like, well, because we are.
Right.
But it's like you want to pull your hair out. You're like, why is this a thing? So I'm glad, and I really hope to see some change in this direction. I really, 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 really can't wait until we see some change in this direction.
Because
it's been so bad. It's been so poorly done, and it's been so mishandled for so long that you just want a good win. And that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm looking for. I really want to see a win when it comes to animated or live action, shows that focus around video games, because and I want them to keep that, I want them to respect the story, and I want them to build it out correctly. And that's tough to do. It's a tough ask, but Arcane proves that it can be done.
It absolutely can be done, just as long as the main, like Arcane, it just proves what I've been saying forever about video game adaptations. You got to find a way to enrich the pre-existing story as it was developed for a video game and put it into a TV context by building out the lore and the narrative so that it suits that medium. In games, the story and the narrative is constructed to suit the gameplay. It's an active experience, whereas with a movie or TV show, it's a passive experience. You need to have much more there. Arcane showed that if you do that, you can create something truly masterful. And that arrow got that griffin in the ass. All right, that wasn't intentional. Let's move beyond that. We got a couple other stories that we want to get to, and we spent a lot of time on that. Obviously, just go see Arcane. It's on Netflix. It's fantastic. Next one. Back to Activision Blizzard, of course, your regular update on this. It looks like all three titans of the console industry have come out in opposition to the way that Activision Blizzard / Bobby Kotick have been acting. First, we had PlayStation's boss, Jim Ryan, come out against them. Then we had Phil Spencer from Xbox. And now Doug Bowser, the appropriately named boss of Nintendo, has come out and condemned Activision Blizzard. A company-wide email sent out on November 19th, that's just over a week from the time of recording this podcast, was sent out. And in this email, Bowser says that he finds the stuff that's been going on at that company, quote, distressing and disturbing, and that they the things that have been happening run counter to Bowser's values as well as Nintendo's beliefs, values, and policies. At the moment, Nintendo is working with the ESA, which is the Entertainment Software Association. If you don't know what that is, it's just a lobbying organization, basic one for, obviously, entertainment software. It's an organization that members of Nintendo and Activision happen to be members of. Bowser said in the email that they are working closely with the ESA are working closely with the ESA to prevent anything like what happened at Activision Blizzard from ever happening in their company. Now, whether or not the ESA will be effective in this regard is hard to say. People apparently have,
very little hope in a bureaucratic institution, organization, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, that focuses on ruining as many lives as humanly possible when it comes to ridiculous overreach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can imagine it. So it's like, it's not that hard.
But okay. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's like, I don't want to be too hard on them, but at the same time, it's like, I don't suspect they'll be able to do much.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, I wouldn't necessarily want them to. I don't want an organization to just decide, to crush a company. I don't think that's a good idea. I think what we want to have is, I think the biggest reaction from this should come from the players and should come from the community. Then next to that, it should come from the developers themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It should come from developers being able to get enough power or organization to confront their bosses on their own terms. I think that's the best thing. I don't think it's a good idea to allow a bureaucracy to say, hey, we're just going to shut you down now. It's like that's the worst thing, because again, where does that stop, right? Because does that even stop anywhere?
Mm-hmm.
that's the big question there, is like, are we going to, like, is this going to be a continual thing? And so it's question, like, obviously there's lots of questions and stuff like that, and really what I want to see, as far as like improving the environment, improving the game, like the thing there. I want the employees and the players to have the most power there. Past that, I want obviously some legal
changes.
Yeah, I want law and order to come in, and like, somebody needs to, for the one girl who committed suicide. It's like, that is, and we're getting a really heavy topic here with this, but it's like that, that is unacceptable, period.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, again, workplace doesn't always have the ability to the workplace doesn't always have the ability to perfect, to fix your problems that you're having at home. But they should have, in some way, shape, or form, there should be, when somebody says, their first response to this was I remember hearing the first response was, it's like, oh, that had nothing to do with us. It's like, that's a categoric lie.
Yeah.
Because if you're working at a company and you have and you're so stressed out that you end up committing suicide, the company bears some responsibility.
Right.
Is it 1%? Is it 2%? Is it 10? Is it 30? Is it 50? Is it 90? The answer is that in some level, in some way, shape, or form, the company has a responsibility, period.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no way around it, because it's their place of employment. It is where they work. It is what they do. And if you are working in an environment where you don't feel safe at all, that has at least a small level to play in it. Now, maybe you're not, maintaining your life the way that you should, right? Maybe you're too stressed out. Maybe you're not making healthy choices. Maybe you're picking up some sniff on the side. Maybe you haven't developed a proper relationship with your family at home, and that's affecting your ability to to have a job and to maintain responsibilities outside of that without losing your mind. It's like again, that is something that realistically lots of people struggle with, and that's the great struggle of life. But for a corporation, for some executive or CEO to look at a scenario like the one that played out and say, oh, we share absolutely no responsibility here. It's like, that is so arrogant and selfish.
Yeah.
And it's so wrong, because, again, yeah, sure, you might not have had more than 10% to do with it, but you didn't have nothing.
Right.
Like, they worked there for you. And for sure in this, and again, I don't want to spout legalese, but they worked there, and the thing that supposedly, again, as far as what's been reported, happened under your watch. It happened at that place of employment with people at that place of employment, and somehow that person committed suicide, and it's not your fault. Well, again, from what we heard from the police report, is that it was entirely based around that.
Yeah. There are people at your company that were actively involved in making this woman's life a living hell. We know this.
Exactly. And so to say nothing is it's so filthy, and it's so derogatory, and it's so dismissive of real problems that people get, and that, sure, yeah, some people overplay the problems that they have at work. I've seen it. I've been around guys who it's always somebody else's fault, right? Yeah. It's never their fault. It's never what they did. I'm thinking of one example in particular where a guy he used every excuse he could possibly muster to point at his at his place of work and say that it's all their fault, when really a lot of it boiled down to his own fault, and him not doing what he needed to do to have, to keep his life in order. He wasn't keeping his life in order, and therefore he blamed everybody else around him. It's like, that's not we don't know how much to a degree that's happening, but it's not all of that. That's not a scenario in which that happens that way. And so, yes, I feel very sorry for this girl. I feel worse that this experience is something that is too common, happens too often, and we all know that it does, and we don't need to pretend that it, like you don't have to pretend that it doesn't, because it does. Now, again, is it always true? No, it's not always true, but it is true to some extent in most situations where you do have an outcome like this. I would say that it's relevant in nearly all, because again, the situation here is that, this is the cause of it. And Bobby's first reaction to this, to get us back onto the point, was absolutely ludicrous. That he said, "Oh, it's none of our fault. This has nothing to do with us." It's like, no, it does. In some level, be a human being and admit that, because it's disgusting to see you like branch off, like just to passively like brush off this very serious problem, and be like, "Oh, no, we don't care." It's like, oh, for crying out loud. It's so gross. But yeah.
It's a heavy topic, and given the stuff that has happened, especially with that one woman, it kind of baffles me that Bobby Kotick thinks that it's okay for him to try and stick around and try to fix the problem. That's sort of like thinking that
he's been at the head of Activision for 22 years, I think it is.
Yeah, and
this is been an ongoing problem. This also shuts down that whole argument that, this was all Blizzard's fault. No, it wasn't all Blizzard's fault. There were some bad actors that were there doing some nasty things, clearly, during when Blizzard was, its own company. But we didn't have problems to this degree. And I think what happened, and I described this with Moon the other day, I think that what we see here is that the problem was that there's always problem people. There's always like 10% of the population that, if it was culturally acceptable and they could get away with it, stabbing you in the back, stealing what you have, and leaving you in a ditch for dead is something that they would absolutely do.
Yeah.
And then anything below that, obviously, anything below cold-blooded murder is also on the table. And it's just a degree at which they can feel that they can get away with it. Exactly. And I feel that, again, there was some of these bad apples that there was no direct sign that they were bad apples at the time when this stuff was starting to happen with them as they were back then. But now, once those, once there was more power, more power dynamics and stuff like that. I use this example. It's like, well, it was always a boys club, and, where they would hit on the girls at the office. It's like, okay, let's look at what happened, like, back before Activision bought out Blizzard. What did you have happen? You had a lot of very nerdy guys start working at the company, got very rich, got very influential. Then they started dating some of their coworkers, or in some cases their secretaries or whatever. But then what's the outcome of that? Like, what became of that? Well, in most situations that I looked at, they got married and had a family.
Yeah.
In which case, that's a perfectly acceptable thing. Like, that's just the way that humans are. I mean, humans often, get married to people that are in their immediate sphere of either work or life. And in this case, you have a lot of what appears to be healthy marriages with families and kids. And it's like, okay, I think that that's a fine thing that like happened, because again, we don't have humanity unless we have like, kids and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's like It's like, I think that outcome largely seemed to be fairly positive. But as soon as Activision came in and started pushing stuff around, that's when the worst of the stuff started to happen. That's where the worst of the stuff that we're hearing about now started to become more commonplace. And people were surrounded with just bad situations and bad actors doing horrible things over and over and over and over again, with very little recourse for people who were doing things that were effectively illegal. And now you don't have, and again, is it a sign of the times, or is it that that when you look at the company now, you don't have people pairing off and creating families. You have, guys taking advantage of girls and girls taking advantage of guys, and just a mess of stuff, like alcohol being used in every which way that apparently was like still not banned. Like you could just start drinking in the afternoon while you were still on your job. Yeah. It's like that surprised me the most.
That just sounds like standard.
Wait, alcohol wasn't banned?
Yeah.
Like, what? How?
That seems like such a standard thing that you ban from any workplace.
Exactly. And it's like, why do you ban alcohol from a workplace? Well, unless you're doing it for, unless it's part of your actual like process or whatever, which there's a very small number of companies and employee. There's that situation is microly like not, something that happens.
Clinical trials, right? Maybe.
Yeah, like there's a handful of situations, literally I'm talking about like 5 or 6 situations where I think that you might be able to explain that away or come up with some like reason for why that's a thing, right? Like, but I can't think of it here, and it seems ridiculous on its face that oh yeah, this would be okay. But that's the situation that you see now. And so that's why this whole Bobby Kotick saying, "Oh, I'm going to stay and fix the problem." No, you were part of the problem from the beginning. Because all of these things got thousands of times worse. It wasn't some guy, awkwardly hitting on a coworker because he thinks she's pretty. It wasn't that. Right. It's now like, again, the stuff the legally, like the stuff that is illegal that was going on. That's what happened. That's what came of it. And that is absolutely frightful that they were just so okay with that. So many people were just like, oh yeah, no, it's whatever. It's like, that's the problem. That's where like I shake my head and I'm like, wow, that is so bad. That's so bad. What are you doing? Like, it hurts my brain trying to think about it. And again, I don't think somebody awkwardly trying to flirt with their coworker should be
considered harassment.
I don't think that's harassment. As long as it's once, right?
Yeah.
It's like once, maybe twice. Maybe you didn't get the message the first time. Maybe you wasn't clear enough. And it's like people teach your kids how to like flirt and communicate properly. Like, I mean, I know it's tricky. It's not the easiest thing in the universe, but
what's the alternative if you don't?
Right? Because again, there's and again, I don't want people taking this out of context. It's like what's a bad way to flirt, like legally bad? Oh, well, following somebody to their car and insisting that that you should really go on a date with them. That's really terrible. I don't know who you think you are, but that's not the way to flirt. It's like, and again, I've seen people do this, and it's cringy, it's disgusting, it's borderline illegal because it's like it's so dumb, and you're just like, oh my god, this person has absolutely no like sense. And then in some cases it becomes malicious, and when it becomes malicious, that's an even bigger problem, right? So I don't want to discount that, and the reason why I bring this stuff up is because that's all I feel that Bobby is doing in this case. He's just making excuses after excuses after excuses after excuses, saying, no, I'm the person who's been doing this all the time. And he gets on and the video that he made about him talking about how he's got the most inclusive, anybody who uses verbiage like that, I've got the most inclusive, blah, blah, blah. Guarantee you they've got more skeletons in the closet than you would ever want to see.
It's almost always the case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it is. It is so common, and it is so gross, and it is so again, common, that it really, like, it's hard to understand how somebody can say that with a straight face and think that they're good. Like they're good, that they're doing something right. And that's what I feel that Bobby's doing. So no, this whole news with Bobby, and then the one thing I want to point out, and I feel there's a lot of people who have not properly apologized for it. So that Franson lady, had put out that first response.
Yeah.
Turns out that she didn't write that. That was Bobby who wrote it. And then he was the one, he put her name on it and then said, and then when the backlash was quite negative, he came out and said it was tone deaf. And he said, oh yeah, I've had a discussion with Fran. She's not going to do that anymore. And, we're looking, that was very unacceptable. He was the one who wrote it. And so there's a lot of people who they're still hating on Fran because of this letter and the fact that she did a bunch of stuff with Bush because for some reason, she worked in politics before this. Mm-hmm. And again, it's like I'm not saying that, she was right in everything else that she did, but I got to point out the fact that a lot of these people were, really, really dumping on her very hard and being extremely jubilantly cruel in trying to roast her. Then turns out that's wasn't even her
fault. Yeah,
wasn't even her fault. Wasn't something that she did. And again, you may dislike her because of her stance on torture or whatever. It's like that is a different conversation in the realm of this. Like there is some connection, but it's not enough that I want to add it in here. So yeah, so the amount of stuff that Bobby's been doing that's come out, the fact that he made the threats to one of his secretaries long ago, the fact that he settled stuff out of court. Again, we're trusting on the reporting on this to be accurate, but yeah, they did all this, all these errors, all these mistakes, all these problems, all this stuff, and then he's just like standing there like, oh yeah, like please keep me around. It's like, oh
yeah, please let me continue to make my $200 million. I don't know what I'll be able to do without that.
Well, the sad thing about it is that even if they fire him today, they've got to pay him just under $300 million. Like that's the worst thing about it is like, even with all this stuff, without an actual red herring, which of course magically disappeared. Without that red herring, not red herring. I'm using the wrong term. Term for hot evidence, hot potato, in their literal hand that they're caught.
Smoking gun.
Smoking gun. Thank you. So without that smoking gun, they can't get rid of him. And I was hearing that there isn't actually a moral clause in his paperwork, like in his hiring agreement. That to me is like stunning, absolutely stunning, that they somehow don't have a moral clause. If that's true, again, I don't know if that's 100% accurate or not, but there are a lot of companies that don't have a moral clause. It's like, you murdered your cousin so you could sleep with your sister. It's like, we can't fire you for that without having to pay you out. Like, what in the world? Really? Mm-hmm. Like, good Lord.
Hey, Sy, we've been on this subject for a while, I gotta go in like just a few minutes.
All right, unfortunately. Well, that's the subject there. Bobby K is
piece of crap
and giant piece of garbage. So yeah. Next story.
Okay, we'll just do a quick one on this, and then I gotta go. So my boy Hideo Kojima. This is actually, speaking of people who are actually ethical, good game developers. Say what you will about Hideo Kojima's ego, but compared to the stuff that Activision Blizzard has done, Hideo Kojima is like a saint. He is apparently setting up a new division within his company, Kojima Productions, and guess what? It has nothing to do with gaming. It actually has to do with film and TV. According to GamesIndustry.biz, Kojima is opening this new division within Los Angeles, naturally. The head of this new division, Riley Russell, says the following. The new division will be tasked with working with creative and talented professionals in television, music, and film, as well as the more familiar games industry. The team has as its charter the goal of expanding the reach and awareness of the properties now under development at Kojima Productions, and to make them even more a part of our popular culture. Kojima Productions business developer manager Yoshiko Fukuda said, finding new ways to entertain, engage, and offer value to our fans is essential in a fast-moving, ever-changing storytelling world. Our new division will take the studio into even more areas that present our creative narratives beyond video games and to open up ways for our fans to communicate and immerse themselves in these spaces. Now, if only Kojima could get the film and TV rights to make Metal Gear Solid TV and/or movies, then that could become like the follow-up masterpiece to Arcane, right? Just in a perfectly ideal world, but like we just pointed out, we live in a world where if Bobby Kotick was to get fired, he'd make $300 million in severance pay. Well, I will say this. If anybody is going to open up a film/TV division within their gaming company, I think it'd probably make most sense for Kojima to do this, considering that he himself has said that his body is made of 70% movies. And it makes sense. I mean, if you've ever played any of his games, they're like 70% cutscenes. And I say that as somebody who worships at the altar of Hideo Kojima. I love his storytelling and his very cinematic games. So as long as, he doesn't make like a bunch of different versions of Death Stranding and actually, expands beyond that with his brilliantly psychotic mind, I'm very curious to see what he'd end up doing. What do you think, Seb?
Yeah, I'm really excited for this. I hope that he really gets to make what he wants, and I think that it's been in his system for a long time, and I think this pairs really well with Arcane because because we can see what game studios and game creators can do with narrative, and I think I think that is a great idea, and I am really looking forward to where it goes with that. So yeah, I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. I would be so happy because we know that there's been a Metal Gear Solid movie in the works. We already know who's going to play Solid Snake. That's going to be Oscar Isaac. We already know who's directing it. It's the same guy who directed Kong Skull Island. It would be a match made in heaven if somehow Kojima could get the rights to produce film and TV for Metal Gear Solid from Konami and then have that be developed within his studio alongside Sony and Jordan Vogt-Roberts. But I think Konami just hates Kojima's guts a little bit too much, so that would never happen. But that would be the best scenario, I imagine.
Yeah. So, and then just a quick follow-up on a story that we covered before on our main channel. Peloton, I don't know how to pronounce that.
Yeah, it's Peloton.
Has now, again, we covered the story a long time ago. They have been making and planning to make more video games to work into their exercise equipment and more exercise equipment that works into video games. And the update is that they're pushing even harder on this.
Great. So now all they need to do is just make VR a huge part of their stuff, so that way you can, I don't know, bike around France or something. Because I would buy a VR headset if I could do, and a Peloton if I could do something like that.
Yeah. And they have a big I believe they have now gotten a studio more involved, and it's really coming together. So nothing super amazing to show off right now, just that the early rumors of this that we covered before are now basically like they are now like putting pavement to the rubber to the road, so to speak. So they're now actively working on things. They are working on building cycling esports as well, so that people can compete in their homes in tournaments and things like that. We don't really see those giant triathlons or anything like that anymore. or even marathons. Like we really don't see those today because of the whole COVID stuff. But yeah, the option is now here and growing. That Peloton is really pushing this, and they're really pushing it hard. So I'm hopeful. I got my fingers crossed that that they can find some answers to some really cool questions, and this makes me want to get one of their products even more so now. So they're very expensive still.
Yeah, they are
expensive,
but they're effective.
Yeah, but they are clearly very effective, and I think it's great when people get some mastery over their health. So it's something that I need to do. I'm sure it's something that everybody could do just a little bit more. So yeah, really excited about this story, and we've been keeping our eye on this. So just a short update on this.
Yeah, let's just hope it doesn't turn into something like Kinect, where people enjoy it for like a week and then they just stop doing it because they don't want to exercise when they're playing. Hopefully, it actually becomes something that people are more inclined to use.
Well, yeah, I think that's always been the thing, is like get it to be something that people actually use.
Right. Something like be like the next Dance Revolution or something. All right, that does it for us, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in to Maximum News this week. Make sure to hit that like button, because when you do that, it tells the YouTube algorithm that not only the content like this particular video that you're watching right now is worth watching, but it also tells them that all the other videos on this channel are worth watching. It helps us grow this show and present you news that maybe other gaming news shows won't present due to their political sensitivity or stuff like that. We're all just about making sure that you guys get all the relevant information and understanding it properly, so that way you know how to best spend your money. And by that I mean, don't buy anything related to Activision Blizzard. Buy stuff from Mr. Kojima and other people that make games ethically. I want to thank Syb as always for doing this. Just tell them about the Triple S League, Syb.
Yeah, so join us over on the main channel and follow us here on Twitter. All the stuff is in the description. Click on channels to get our other channels. And yeah, we've got some really great announcements to come in December, and then we're going to be doing a lot of stuff in the new year.
Cool. And you guys can just find me on all the relevant forms of social media, just at Max Derrat. You can find links to that in the description box below. Thanks, everybody. And I got to go stream Valheim. I promised one of the guys that's actually watching this right now that we would stream it together on Twitch. And you should follow me on Twitch, by the way, Max Derrat. Yeah, that's it. Till next week, guys. Stay yellow.